For 3,000 years, the Galactic Dominion ruled the stars with an iron fist. Their massive fleets crushed rebellions before they could even begin. Their advanced technology made them seem like gods to lesser species. Their propaganda painted them as the righteous guardians of galactic peace. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. A world called Earth, inhabited by a species that had never known defeat when their backs were against the wall, a species that turned every disadvantage into an advantage, every weakness into strength. The Dominion thought humans were just another primitive race to be conquered and enslaved. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Now, as warning sirens blare across every Dominion stronghold and their most powerful fleets retreat in terror, the galaxy is about to learn why you should never corner a human, why you should never threaten their families, and why you should never ever make humanity angry. The age of the Galactic Dominion is ending. The age of humanity has begun. Are you ready to witness the rise of Earth's children among the stars? Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Might, watching the holographic display with growing unease. The blue-green world spinning slowly before him looked peaceful enough with its swirling white clouds and vast oceans. Intelligence reports called it Earth, home to a species called humans. Just another primitive civilization in need of Dominion guidance. But something felt wrong. Admiral! His tactical officer, Commander Zixtal, approached with a datapad clutched in his four-armed grip. The preliminary scans are complete. The planet shows industrial development, but their technology appears to be several centuries behind our own. No energy shields detected. No faster-than-light travel capabilities. Their weapons are crude, projectile-based systems. Kethvar's scaled brow furrowed. In his 300 years of service to the Dominion, he had conquered 47 worlds. Each time, the pattern was the same. Initial resistance, followed by desperate attempts at negotiation, then eventual surrender when faced with the Dominion's overwhelming technological superiority. The humans should have detected their fleet by now. They should have been broadcasting surrender terms or pleading for mercy. Instead, there was only silence. Have they responded to our standard conquest protocols? Kethvar asked. No, sir. We've broadcast the Dominion's terms of surrender in 17 different languages, including their primary communication forms. They acknowledge our presence but refuse to respond to our demands. This was unusual. Most species, when faced with a Dominion battle fleet, either surrendered immediately or launched futile attacks. The humans were doing neither. They simply waited. Perhaps they don't understand the gravity of their situation, suggested Zixtal. Should we demonstrate our capabilities? A small bombardment of an uninhabited area might convince them to be more reasonable. Quote, Kethvar considered this. The Dominion preferred willing submission to outright conquest. Willing subjects were more productive, caused fewer problems, and required less oversight. A show of force usually did the trick. Very well. Target those ice formations at the planet's southern pole. A single pulse should be sufficient. The weapons officer, a hulking Gorvani with stone-like skin, nodded and began inputting commands. The Eternal Might's main cannon, capable of cracking moons, charged with a low hum that vibrated through the ship's hull. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Firing. A lance of pure energy erupted from the flagship, crossing the void between the fleet and Earth in seconds. It struck the Antarctic ice sheet with devastating force, vaporizing millions of tons of ice in an instant. The explosion was visible from orbit, a brief sun blooming on the planet's surface. Transmission from the planet, Admiral, the communications officer reported. Finally, Kethvar straightened his uniform and activated the main screen. The image that appeared showed a middle-aged human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. He had graying hair and tired eyes, but there was something in his expression that made Kethvar pause. He had seen fear in the eyes of those about to be conquered. He had seen anger, desperation, even defiance. What he saw in this human's eyes was something else entirely. Something cold and calculating, I am General Marcus Stone of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said, his voice steady and calm. I assume that little light show was meant to intimidate us. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Dominion. That demonstration was a mercy human. Your planet is now under Dominion authority. Surrender unconditionally, and your people will be treated as valued subjects of the Empire. Resist, and you will be crushed. The human's expression didn't change. Admiral, let me be very clear about something. We know who you are. We know what you've done to the other worlds in this sector. We've been watching you for quite some time. This gave Kethvar pause. Watching them? How was that possible? Their intelligence network was thorough. No primitive species had ever detected Dominion surveillance. Impossible. Your technology is centuries behind ours. You have no means of interstellar observation. General Stone smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Admiral, you're operating under some serious misconceptions. First, you assume that what you can detect represents the full extent of our capabilities. Second, you assume that we're alone. Third, and most importantly, you assume that we're afraid of you. The bridge fell silent. In 3 centuries of conquest, no one had ever spoken to Admiral Kethvar with such casual confidence. You have 12 hours to withdraw from this system, the human continued. After that, we'll consider your presence an act of war. The transmission ended. Kethvar stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Zixtal spoke. Admiral, surely they're bluffing. Our sensors show no hidden defenses, no fleet movements. They can't possibly threaten us. Kethvar was about to agree when his sensor officer, a nervous Quillen with oversized eyes, suddenly straightened at his console. Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual readings. What kind of readings? Energy signatures, sir. They're coming from empty space. The tactical display shifted, showing the area around Earth. For a moment, it appeared normal. Then, one by one, objects began appearing on the screen. Ships, hundreds of them. They materialized from what seemed like nowhere, their stealth systems deactivating in a carefully coordinated sequence. But these weren't the primitive vessels they had expected. These were sleek, angular craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in the Dominion's databases, and they were moving with a precision and coordination that spoke of advanced tactical systems. How many? Kethvar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Still counting, sir. Current tally is 400 and rising. No, wait, 600. 800. The sensor officer's voice trailed off as more ships continued to appear. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're receiving transmissions from across the sector. Dominion outposts are reporting similar human fleets appearing in their systems. Kethvar felt his blood turn to ice. How many systems? Every Dominion installation within 50 light-years is reporting human fleet contacts. The bridge erupted in panicked chatter, but Kethvar couldn't hear it over the roaring in his ears. It was impossible. Intelligence had confirmed that humans were a single-planet species with no interstellar travel capability. They should have been completely isolated on their primitive world. Instead, they seemed to have fleets positioned throughout Dominion space. Fleets that had somehow remained completely invisible until now. Sir, Zixtal's voice was shaking, long-range sensors are detecting additional signatures, much larger ones. They're moving toward us. The display zoomed out to show the outer edge of the solar system. What Kethvar saw there defied belief. Ships were emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. Not the crude wormhole technology used by some advanced species, but something far more sophisticated. The rifts opened and closed with surgical precision, each one disgorging vessels that dwarfed even Dominion battleships. Admiral, General Stone's image reappeared on the main screen. I thought you should see what you're really dealing with. The human gestured and the background behind him changed, revealing what appeared to be a massive command center filled with 3-dimensional displays and bustling activity. The technology visible in the background was clearly beyond anything the Dominion possessed. You see, we've been playing the long game for quite a while now. When your scouts first reached our system 200 years ago, we made a decision. We could either reveal ourselves and face immediate conquest, or we could bide our time and learn everything we could about you. Kethvar's mind reeled. 200 years? The first Dominion scout ships had reported Earth as uninhabited except for primitive life forms. Either their intelligence had been catastrophically wrong, or "You've been deceiving us," he breathed. "We've been studying you," Stone corrected. "Your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We've infiltrated your communications networks, analyzed your ship designs, and mapped every installation you've built. We know how you think, how you fight, and most importantly, how you die." The general paused, his expression growing harder. "But it wasn't until you started enslaving entire populations that we decided you needed to be stopped. The Zephyrians, the Covenant worlds, the hegemony of Tulvar. You've turned millions of sentient beings into slaves. That ends today." "You're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Kethvar snarled, finding his voice. "The Dominion has fleets across the galaxy. You cannot possibly fight us all." "Can't we?" Stone smiled again. "Admiral, you're about to learn something about humanity. We don't just fight wars, we win them. Completely and permanently." The display changed again, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of systems were marked in Dominion blue. As they watched, system after system began changing color, shifting from blue to human gold. "Every major Dominion installation is currently under attack," Stone explained calmly. "Your orbital weapons platforms, your shipyards, your administrative centers, your supply depots. We've been planning this operation for 50 years. Every target has been identified, every approach route calculated, every countermeasure anticipated." Kethvar watched in horror as the map continued to change. In minutes, nearly a quarter of Dominion space had shifted to human control. The attacks weren't random or scattered. They were coordinated with military precision that suggested planning on an unimaginable scale. "This is impossible," Ziektal whispered. "The logistics alone, the communication requirements, the resource expenditure would be impossible for most species," Stone agreed, having somehow heard the comment. "But then most species don't have humanity's particular talents." The general gestured again, and the view shifted to show battles raging across multiple systems simultaneously. But these weren't the chaotic melees that typically characterize space combat. The human fleets moved with perfect coordination, their ships dancing around Dominion vessels with an elegance that was almost artistic. They struck with devastating precision, targeting critical systems and leaving Dominion ships disabled rather than destroyed. "We're not here to commit genocide, Admiral. We're here to free the galaxy from your tyranny. Your ships will be spared if they surrender. Your crews will be treated according to interstellar law. But your empire ends today." Kethvar realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a military campaign, but the systematic dismantling of an entire interstellar empire. The Dominion had spent 3 millennia building its power base. The humans were tearing it down in a matter of hours. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice cracked with strain. "The human fleet is moving. They're taking formation around our position." The tactical display showed the truth of it. Hundreds of human vessels had formed a perfect sphere around the Dominion fleet. They held position with mechanical precision, their weapons trained inward. Any attempt to flee would result in immediate destruction. "Admiral Kethvar," General Stone's voice was now formal, "by the authority vested in me by the United Earth Defense Force and our allies throughout the galaxy, I hereby demand the immediate and unconditional surrender of your fleet. You have committed crimes against sentient life that will require you to face justice. However, if you surrender now, your crews will be spared." "Allies?" Kethvar seized on the word. "What allies?" Stone's expression shifted, becoming almost sad. "Admiral, did you really think that in 3,000 years of oppression you hadn't made any enemies? Every species you've enslaved, every world you've conquered, every culture you've destroyed, they've all been waiting for this day. We just gave them the tools they needed to fight back." As if to emphasize his point, new contacts began appearing on the tactical display, ships and configurations that Kethvar recognized with growing dread. Zephyrian attack cruisers, thought destroyed decades ago, two Leverian battle platforms that should have been scrapped. Covenant dreadnoughts that supposedly no longer existed. "Impossible," he whispered. "We destroyed their fleets. We dismantled their shipyards." "You destroyed what you could see," Stone corrected. "But you underestimated something fundamental about intelligent life, Admiral. When you push people hard enough, when you take everything they care about, they don't just give up, they adapt. They survive, and eventually, they push back." The communication channel shifted, and suddenly Kethvar was looking at multiple screens. Dozens of faces stared back at him, representing species from across the galaxy. Some he recognized as supposedly extinct civilizations. Others bore the marks of Dominion subjugation, but were now wearing military uniforms of their own design. A Zephyrian commander with distinctive blue-scaled features spoke first. "Admiral Kethvar, you destroyed my homeworld. 30 billion of my people died when your fleets glassed our cities. But some of us survived. Some of us remembered." A massive Gorvani similar to the weapons officer on Kethvar's own bridge but wearing different markings was next. "You enslaved my species for 800 years, you turned us into living weapons for your war machine, but you never broke our spirits, and now we fight alongside those who would see us free." One by one, the faces spoke. Each represented a civilization that the Dominion had supposedly conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. Each carried the weight of generations of oppression, and each was now armed with human technology and training. "This is the Galactic Liberation Alliance," General Stone explained. "Every species that ever suffered under Dominion rule united for the first time in galactic history. We've spent 50 years building this coalition, sharing technology, coordinating plans, and preparing for this moment." The scope of what he was facing began to sink in. This wasn't just a human uprising. It was a galactic revolution, orchestrated by a species that had somehow remained hidden while building the most sophisticated military alliance in recorded history. "How?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "How did we stay hidden?" Stone seemed to understand the question. "Holographic camouflage, quantum stealth systems, temporal displacement fields, dimensional phase technology. We didn't just study your science, Admiral. We surpassed it." The general paused, then continued in a softer tone. "But if you're asking how we convinced so many species to work together, that's simple. We offered them something you never did: hope." Around the bridge, Kethvar's officers watched in stunned silence as more and more Dominion positions fell on the tactical displays. Centuries of military dominance were crumbling in real time. "Sir," Zixtal whispered, "what are your orders?" Kethvar looked at his tactical officer, then at the screens showing the faces of the Alliance. Finally, he turned to General Stone. "What happens to us if we surrender? You'll be transported to a neutral world where you'll face trial for crimes against sentient life. The evidence against you is extensive, but you'll have legal representation and a fair hearing. Your crews, assuming they weren't involved in atrocities, will be repatriated to Dominion space once a new government is established." "And if we don't surrender?" Stone's expression hardened. "Then you'll be destroyed, completely and without mercy." "We've given your empire every chance to change its ways over the past 3 millennia. You chose conquest and oppression every single time. This is your last opportunity to choose differently." Kethvar closed his eyes. In his 3 centuries of life, he had never imagined a moment like this. The mighty Galactic Dominion, reduced to a collection of surrounded and outgunned fleets, facing an enemy that had completely outmaneuvered them at every level. When he opened his eyes, he saw something that shook him to his core. The tactical display now showed the complete picture of what was happening across the galaxy. System after system was falling not through destruction, but through coordinated liberation. Slave populations were being freed. Prison worlds were being emptied. Dominion administrators were being arrested en masse. It wasn't just a military defeat, it was the systematic undoing of everything the Dominion had built over 3,000 years of expansion. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving surrender messages from fleets across the sector. The 4th Battle Group has laid down arms. The 7th Defense Fleet is requesting terms. Kethvar held up a hand to stop the litany of defeats. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders that he realized he no longer had the authority to give. The Dominion was ending, whether he participated in that ending or not. "General Stone," he said finally, "I hereby surrender my fleet to the Galactic Liberation Alliance. We will comply with your terms and submit to your authority." General Dasu Physic, "Thank you, Admiral. Your crew will be treated with dignity, and you'll have our protection during the transition period." As Dominion ships throughout the system powered down their weapons and prepared to be boarded, Kethvar found himself wondering about something that had been nagging at him throughout the encounter. "General," he called out before the transmission ended, "one question, if I may?" "Of course. Your species, humans. What makes you so different? How did you accomplish something that no other race in galactic history has managed?" General Stone was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. When he finally answered, his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "Admiral, every species in this galaxy has something that makes them unique. The Zephyrians are natural mathematicians. The Gorvani are incredibly strong. The Quillen have perfect memory. But humans have something else. We have hope, even when there shouldn't be any. We have stubbornness that borders on insanity. And most importantly, when someone threatens our family, our friends, or innocent people anywhere in the universe, we don't just get angry." He paused, his eyes growing cold. "We get creative. And that, Admiral, is what makes us dangerous." 3 hours after Admiral Kethvar's surrender, Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Defiant Dawn stood in the transport bay watching Dominion prisoners file past. The Gorvani looked confused more than defeated, their stone-like features showing bewilderment at being treated with basic dignity. The Quillen seemed nervous, their large eyes darting around as if expecting punishment that never came. Even the proud Vorthak kept glancing at their human escorts with something approaching surprise. "First time seeing Dominion personnel up close?" asked Commander Jake Rodriguez, joining Sarah at the observation window. "First time seeing them surrender," Sarah replied. "Intelligence briefings are one thing, but seeing the real individuals, it's different." Jake nodded. "Hard to remember their people, too, after everything they've done. But that's what separates us from them, I guess." The Liberation Alliance had been planning for this moment for 50 years, but even the most optimistic projections hadn't anticipated such rapid success. Across 16 sectors, Dominion forces were surrendering faster than prisoner facilities could be established. The key had been the simultaneous nature of the assault, preventing any coordinated response or regrouping. "Captain Chen to the bridge," came the ship's intercom. Sarah exchanged a glance with Jake before heading toward the lift. On the bridge, her communications officer, Lieutenant Torres, was coordinating multiple incoming channels. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmission from Admiral Harrison aboard the Terra's Might." Behind her, Sarah could see the organized chaos of the fleet's command center. Three-dimensional displays showed the tactical situation across multiple star systems, with streams of data flowing constantly. "Sarah, I need the Defiant Dawn and the 3rd Strike Group to proceed immediately to the Kepler 442 system. We've got a developing situation that needs immediate attention." "What kind of situation, Admiral?" The Dominion maintained a slave processing center there. Intelligence estimates suggest they were holding approximately 2 million sentients from a dozen different species. Local garrison forces have barricaded themselves inside and are threatening to execute the prisoners if we attempt a rescue. Sarah felt her jaw clench. This was exactly the scenario they had hoped to avoid. "What's our tactical assessment? The facility is heavily shielded and defended. Direct assault would likely result in massive civilian casualties. But we've got assets in play that might give us other options. I'm uploading the complete mission package now." The bridge displays updated with detailed schematics of the prison complex, guard rotations, communication intercepts, and population distributions. Sarah studied the data with growing concern. The facility was a nightmare of Dominion efficiency, designed to process vast numbers of beings with maximum efficiency and minimum overhead. Admiral, these numbers, they're holding beings from species that were supposedly extinct. Turns out the Dominion was very good at making people disappear, but not so good at actually eliminating them. They've been using supposedly extinct species as secret labor forces for centuries. Jake leaned over Sarah's shoulder, studying the prison layout. Ma'am, even with our stealth systems, this is going to be tricky. The facility has multiple defensive layers, and the guards are positioned to have clear lines of fire on the prisoner blocks. Admiral Harrison's expression grew grim. That's where our new allies come in, Captain. We're not going in alone. The display shifted to show ship signatures approaching Kepler 442 from multiple vectors. Sarah recognized some of the configurations from Alliance databases, but others were completely unfamiliar. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called out, we're receiving a coded transmission. It's in ancient Zephyrian. Put it through the translation matrix, Sarah ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was melodic but carried an undertone of barely controlled rage. Human vessel Defiant Dawn. This is Strike Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Resistance Fleet. We understand you require assistance with a liberation operation. Sarah looked to Admiral Harrison, who nodded. Strike Commander Veltar, this is Captain Chen. We welcome any assistance you can provide. Captain Chen, the facility you seek to liberate holds 300,000 of my people. They were taken from our hidden colonies over the past century. The Dominion believed all Zephyrians were dead. They were incorrect. The tactical display updated again, showing sleek Zephyrian vessels that seemed to shimmer in and out of visibility. Their stealth technology was different from human systems, creating a disturbing visual effect that made them difficult to track even when they weren't trying to hide. Strike Commander, what's your operational plan? Sarah asked. We have infiltrated this facility before, Captain. Scouting missions to identify our people and map the interior. The guards use automated systems that respond to species-specific biometrics. They will not detect my people moving through the facility. Jake whistled softly. They've been planning prison breaks for how long? 47 years, came the reply. We have been patient, but patience has its limits. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Captain Chen, I'm authorizing joint operations with all Alliance forces. The Zephyrians know the prison layout better than anyone. Use their intelligence. Understood, Admiral. Defiant Dawn. Out. Sarah turned to her crew. All right, people. We're about to conduct our first joint operation with the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Torres, establish secure communication protocols with all incoming vessels. Rodriguez, I want tactical solutions for every possible scenario. Science Officer Park, start analyzing those Zephyrian stealth systems. I want to understand how they work. Over the next hour, ships continued arriving in the Kepler 442 system. Each brought representatives of species that the Dominion had supposedly conquered or destroyed. Julvarian heavy cruisers with their distinctive crystalline hulls, hegemony fast attack craft that seemed to be made more of energy than matter. Even a few vessels from species that Alliance intelligence had never encountered. Captain, Science Officer Park called out, I'm reading some interesting data on the new arrivals. That ship that just translated in don't I can't identify its propulsion system. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. It was elegant in a way that seemed almost organic, its hull flowing in curves that suggested it had been grown rather than built. Hail them! The response came immediately, but not through normal communication channels. Instead, thoughts and concepts seemed to flow directly into the minds of everyone on the bridge. It wasn't telepathy exactly, more like a direct transfer of information and meaning. Greetings, human vessel. We are the eternal vigil of the Wanderer fleet. We have come to assist in the liberation of our imprisoned kin. Sarah fought through the disorientation of the alien communication method. Welcome, Eternal Vigil. Can you provide tactical support for our operation? We are not warriors in the conventional sense, but we have other capabilities. The imprisoned beings below suffer from despair and fear. We can alleviate their psychological distress and help coordinate their movements during evacuation. Jake looked confused. Captain, I think they're talking about some kind of mass telepathic communication, not telepathy. Empathic resonance. We share strength where there is weakness, hope where there is despair. It is our nature. Every species brings something to the table, Sarah murmured, remembering General Stone's words. She opened the general communication channel to address all vessels in the system. All ships, this is Captain Chen of the Defiant Dawn. We have multiple species present, each with unique capabilities. I recommend we approach this as a coordinated effort utilizing everyone's strengths. Strike Commander Veltar's voice came through clearly. Captain Chen, my infiltration teams can disable security systems and guide evacuees to safe zones, but we will need cover for the extraction process. A new voice joined the conversation, speaking in heavily accented Standard. Human Captain, this is Battle Leader Throck of the Gorvani Liberation Corps. My ships carry heavy assault mechs. We can provide distraction while your stealth forces work. Sarah blinked. Gorvani Liberation Corps? I thought the Gorvani were part of the Dominion military. Most are, Throck replied grimly. But some of us remember what we were before we became the Dominion's weapons. Some of us choose to fight for freedom instead of oppression. The tactical situation was becoming incredibly complex with multiple species coordinating capabilities that had never been combined before. Sarah found herself in command of the most diverse military force in galactic history. All right, she said, settling into her captain's chair. Let's plan this operation. Veltar, your people take point on infiltration and security systems. Throk, your mechs provide heavy assault capability if we need it. Eternal Vigil, you handle civilian coordination and psychological support. Defiant Dawn will coordinate overall tactical operations and provide fire support. We're receiving a transmission from the prison facility. They want to negotiate. The main screen activated, showing a Dominion officer in the distinctive black uniform of the Corrections Service. He was a Vorthek, tall and gaunt with pale skin and cold eyes. Behind him, Sarah could see what appeared to be a control center overlooking vast prison blocks. I am Warden Kolith. You will cease your approach immediately or the prisoners will be executed. I have deadman switches positioned throughout the facility. Any attempt to board will result in the immediate death of all captives. Warden, this is Captain Chen of the Liberation Alliance. We're prepared to discuss terms for the safe release of all prisoners. Terms? Kolith laughed, a harsh sound. You naive humans think this is a negotiation. This is a hostage situation. You will withdraw your fleet immediately or 2 million beings will die. Warden, that's not going to happen, but we're willing to discuss alternatives. While Sarah kept the warden talking, her tactical officers were coordinating with the Allied forces. The Zephyrians had already begun infiltrating the outer sections of the facility, their natural stealth abilities enhanced by technology that rendered them invisible to Dominion sensors. Veltar's voice came through on a private channel. Captain Chen, we have disabled 17 security checkpoints. The automated systems believe we are authorized maintenance personnel. We have visual confirmation on prisoner locations. Simultaneously, the Eternal Vigil was establishing empathic contact with the imprisoned populations. Sarah could feel the edge of their influence herself, a subtle warmth that seemed to push back against fear and despair. Captain Chen, the imprisoned ones are responding well. We have established communication networks among them. They are prepared to move when the time comes. Warden, Sarah said, still maintaining the negotiation facade. Surely we can reach some accommodation. The Dominion is finished. Your best option is to surrender peacefully. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, Kolith snarled. A few upstart humans and their trained pets won't change that. We will rebuild, and when we do, every one of your worlds will burn." Sarah noticed that the warden's image was flickering slightly. Jake caught her eye and pointed to his console where he'd noted unusual energy readings from the facility. "Captain," Science Officer Park whispered, "I'm detecting some kind of interference with their communication systems. It's subtle, but their signal integrity is degrading." On another private channel, Throck's gruff voice provided an update. "Human Captain, my scouts report multiple hull breaches in the facility's outer sections. The Zephyrians are very thorough." Sarah realized that while she had been negotiating, the Liberation Alliance had been conducting the most sophisticated infiltration operation she'd ever witnessed. Multiple species working in perfect coordination, each contributing their unique abilities to a single objective. "Warden Koleth," she said, "I think you should look at your security monitors." Sarah watched his face cycle through several emotions as he realized that his facility was no longer secure. "Impossible," he breathed. "Our sensors show no infiltration. Our automated systems report normal operations." "Your sensors are seeing exactly what we want them to see," Sarah replied calmly. "Your automated systems are responding to people your computers believe belong there, and your prisoners are no longer afraid." As if to emphasize her point, the background noise from the prison facility began to change. The sounds of despair and suffering that had provided a constant backdrop to their conversation were being replaced by something else: organization, purpose, hope. "Captain Shen, the imprisoned populations are ready for extraction. All security checkpoints have been bypassed. The warden's dead man switches have been neutralized." Sarah smiled at the thought of what neutralized might mean when applied by a species that could directly manipulate electronic systems with their minds. "Warden, your dead man switches are no longer functional. Your security systems are under our control. Your facility has been completely infiltrated. I'm offering you one last chance to surrender peacefully." Koleth's image flickered as communication systems throughout the facility switched to Alliance control. "This is impossible. You're bluffing." Sarah nodded to Lieutenant Torres, who activated a new display. The screen split, showing multiple views from inside the prison facility. Zephyrian infiltrators were visible moving through corridors, their stealth systems disabled to provide proof of their presence. Gorvani mechs stood at key intersection points providing security, and throughout the facility, prisoners were organizing themselves into evacuation groups under the empathic guidance of the Wanderer fleet. "Warden, this is not a negotiation anymore. This is a rescue operation. Your facility is secure, your prisoners are safe, and your authority is ended. Stand down." For a long moment, Koleth stared at the displays showing his facility under Alliance control. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I surrender. Just please don't let the Gorvani kill me." "I was following orders." Sarah felt a wave of empathic reassurance from the Eternal Vigil. Even the Warden, despite his crimes, was being influenced by their calming presence. "Warden, you'll be treated according to Alliance protocols. You'll face trial for your crimes, but you'll be safe." The rescue operation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Each species contributed their strengths to a coordinated effort that freed 2 million beings in under 6 hours. The Zephyrians handled security and logistics, the Gorvani provided heavy lifting and transportation, the Wanderer fleet managed psychological support and communication, and the humans coordinated the overall operation. As the last transport left the prison facility, Sarah found herself on the observation deck of the Defiant Dawn, watching ships from dozens of species working together to process refugees and prisoners alike. It was unprecedented in galactic history. "Captain," Jake joined her at the window, "Admiral Harrison is requesting an after-action report. No casualties among the prisoners, minimal resistance from facility staff, and we've gathered intelligence on 17 other prison facilities throughout this sector." "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think this is going to work? Long-term, I mean. All these different species working together after centuries of hatred and mistrust, Sarah watched a Zephyrian medical ship transferring severely injured prisoners to a human hospital vessel, while Gorvani engineers worked alongside Wanderer technicians to disable the facility's more cruel systems. Jake, 6 months ago I would have said it was impossible, but look at what we accomplished here. Species that were supposedly extinct working with their former oppressors, guided by beings we didn't even know existed. And it worked! She paused, thinking about the broader implications of what they'd witnessed. The Dominion ruled through fear and division. They convinced every species that they were alone, that resistance was hopeless, that cooperation was impossible. But it turns out that when you give people hope and a common purpose, they can accomplish anything. Even humans learning to work with others, Jake said with a slight smile. Sarah laughed. Especially humans learning to work with others. We spent most of our history fighting each other until we realized we had bigger problems to solve. As if summoned by their conversation, Strike Commander Veltar's image appeared on a nearby communication panel. Captain Chen, my people wish to express their gratitude. 300,000 Zephyrians live today because of this operation. We will not forget. Strike Commander, we couldn't have done it without your infiltration teams. This was a true Alliance victory. And Captain, there are 46 more facilities like this one. My people have been mapping them for decades. When you are ready to continue this work, we will be honored to fight beside you. After Veltar's image faded, Sarah remained at the observation window. The scale of what lay ahead was staggering. The Dominion had built a galactic empire on the suffering of billions of beings. Dismantling that system and rebuilding it into something better would take years, possibly decades. But for the first time since the liberation began, Sarah felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. The Alliance wasn't just a military coalition. It was proof that different species could work together, combine their strengths, and accomplish things that none of them could manage alone. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called out, we're receiving priority orders from Admiral Harrison. The fleet is regrouping for our next operation. What's the target? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. The Dominion Administrative Center at Proxima Centauri. Intelligence indicates they're attempting to coordinate a counterattack. Sarah nodded. The Dominion wouldn't go quietly, and there would be more battles ahead. But each victory brought more species into the Alliance, and each liberated world added to their strength. All right, people, she announced to her crew. Prepare for hyperspace transition. Let's go show the galaxy what a real alliance can accomplish. As the Defiant Dawn and its diverse escort fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives, Sarah couldn't help but think about Admiral Kethavar's question. What made humans different? What had allowed them to accomplish something that no other species had managed? The answer was becoming clearer with each operation. Humans didn't just fight their enemies, they turned them into friends. They didn't just win battles, they won hearts and minds. And most importantly, they didn't just defeat oppression, they replaced it with something better. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics, it was their ability to see potential allies in everyone, even their former enemies. And that, more than any fleet or weapon, was what would bring down the Dominion forever. Admiral Marcus Stone stood in the war room aboard the Terra's Might, studying the three-dimensional hologram that dominated the center of the chamber. The display showed the Proxima Centauri system in exquisite detail, from the red dwarf star at its heart to the massive orbital installations that served as the Dominion's regional administrative center. It's bigger than our intelligence indicated, said Colonel Elena Vasquez, the Alliance's chief strategic analyst. Current estimates suggest over 50 million Dominion personnel stationed throughout the system, including civilian administrators, military forces, and support staff. Any sign of the liberation fleets that were supposed to rendezvous with us? Stone asked. 17 different species have confirmed participation, Admiral. The Zephyrians are already in system, maintaining stealth positions. The Gorvani Liberation Corps is 30 minutes out, and we're receiving reports of some unusual arrivals. Before Stone could ask what she meant by unusual, the communications officer called out from across the room, Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission. Well, sir, you need to see this yourself. The main display activated, showing what appeared to be empty space at first. Then reality seemed to ripple, like looking at something underwater, and a massive vessel began to materialize. It was unlike anything in the Alliance databases, seemingly constructed from living coral and metal fused together in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Greetings, Admiral Stone of the human fleet." The voice that came through the speakers was layered as if multiple beings were speaking in perfect unison. "We are the collective of forgotten worlds. We have come to reclaim what was stolen from us." Joe exchanged glances with his staff. The collective wasn't in any intelligence reports they'd seen. "Welcome to the Alliance. Can you provide tactical support for our operation?" "Admiral Stone, we do not seek to provide support. We seek justice." The installations you see before you were built using the corpses of our worlds. The Dominion strip-mined 7 of our systems to construct their administrative center, our planets, our moons, our asteroid fields, all consumed to feed their hunger for resources. The tactical display updated, showing detailed scans of the Proxima Centauri installations. Colonel Vasquez's face went pale as she read the analysis. "Admiral, these readings. The construction materials are showing biological signatures. They didn't just mine these worlds. They processed them." "Processed them how?" Stone asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "The collective's vessel pulsed with bioluminescent patterns." "They took our living worlds, Admiral Stone. They consumed our biospheres, our ecosystems, our very planets, and transformed them into sterile metal and concrete. 50 billion beings died to create the structures you see before you." The war room fell silent. Even by Dominion standards, the scale of the atrocity was staggering. They hadn't just conquered worlds, they had literally consumed them. "We understand your anger," Stone said carefully, "but our mission is to liberate the system and free the beings held there. We can't allow civilian casualties in just its innocent. But the structures themselves, they must be returned to what they were. We have the capability to restore life to what the Dominion made dead." Before Stone could respond, additional contacts began appearing on the tactical display. Ships were translating in from multiple vectors, each representing species that had grievances against the Dominion. But these weren't just military vessels. Some appeared to be converted civilian craft. Others looked like they'd been built in salvage yards from whatever materials were available. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving hundreds of transmissions. It's like every oppressed species in the galaxy decided to converge on this system." Stone activated the general communication channel. "This is Admiral Stone of the Liberation Alliance. All vessels, please identify yourselves and your intentions." The response was overwhelming. Dozens of voices began speaking simultaneously in languages ranging from standard trade dialects to communication methods that barely registered as speech. The translation matrix struggled to keep up with the volume and variety. "We are the survivors of Kepler. We ate. The Dominion murdered our star. Remnant fleet of the Andorian Republic. They stole our children for 300 years. Ghost ships of the Void Wanderers. We seek the return of our stolen souls. They enslaved our people in the dark places between stars. Each transmission represented another crime, another atrocity, another reason why the Dominion had to be stopped." Stone realized he wasn't commanding a military operation anymore. He was witnessing the convergence of every injustice the Dominion had committed over 3 millennia of expansion. "Colonel Vasquez," he said quietly, "get me casualty estimates for the civilian population in system." "Sir, based on current intelligence, we're looking at approximately 30 to 7 million beings who are just doing their jobs. Administrative staff, maintenance workers, families of military personnel. They're not combatants." Stone nodded grimly. This was the challenge that had kept him awake for weeks during the planning phases. How do you fight an empire without becoming the very thing you're fighting against? "Admiral Stone," came a new voice on the communication channel. This one was familiar. Strike Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Resistance. My scouts report heavy defensive preparations throughout the system. The Dominion is not planning to surrender. The tactical display updated with Zephyrian intelligence data. Defense platforms had been activated throughout the system. Military vessels were taking defensive positions around key installations. And most concerning, several facilities showed signs of implementing scorched earth protocols. They're planning to destroy everything rather than let it fall into Alliance hands, observed Colonel Vasquez. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the system governor. The main display activated, showing an ornate chamber that radiated wealth and power. The figure that appeared was a Dominion elite, a Vorthak with the pale skin and cold eyes characteristic of the ruling class. His uniform was pristine, decorated with medals representing 3 centuries of faithful service to the Empire. I am Governor Thaindis of the Proxima Centauri Administrative Region. You are in violation of Dominion space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Stone stepped forward. Governor, I am Admiral Marcus Stone of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Your empire is finished. We're offering you the opportunity to surrender peacefully and spare the civilian population. Alliance? Thaindis laughed a sound like breaking glass. You mean the rabble of primitives and failed civilizations that you've convinced to follow you? Admiral, the Dominion has faced rebellions before. We've crushed every one. Not like this one, Governor. We're not just another rebellion. We're every species you've ever wronged working together for the first time in galactic history. Working together? The Governor's expression shifted to something approaching amusement. Admiral, do you have any idea what you've unleashed? Some of these species have been enemies for millennia. The moment they no longer have us as a common target, they'll turn on each other. And when they do, we'll be waiting to restore order. Stone felt a chill at the Governor's words. It was true that many of the Alliance species had historical conflicts with each other. The Zephyrians and the Tulvarians had fought a bitter war 5 centuries ago. The Hegemony and the Covenant had territorial disputes that predated the Dominion. What would hold the Alliance together once the immediate threat was eliminated? Perhaps you're right, Governor. Perhaps the Alliance will fragment once the Dominion is defeated. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today we're united in our determination to end your tyranny. Then you'll die united as well, Thaindis replied coldly. I've activated every defense system in the region. My fleets have orders to fight to the last ship. And if it appears that you might actually succeed, well, let's just say that this system contains some very unstable elements that could be accidentally triggered. The transmission ended, leaving Stone and his staff to contemplate the implications. The Governor was threatening to destroy the entire system rather than allow it to fall to the Alliance. Admiral, Colonel Vasquez said quietly, preliminary scans indicate massive antimatter storage facilities throughout the installations. If those were to be deliberately destabilized, Stone finished. 50 million people dead, including 37 million civilians. Admiral Stone, came the voice of the collective again. We are aware of the Governor's threat. Our vessels can contain such explosions, but only if we are positioned correctly. We request permission to begin deployment. What kind of deployment? Stone asked. We will position our ships at key points throughout the system. If the Dominion attempts to destroy the installations, we can absorb the destructive energy and redirect it safely. However, this will leave us vulnerable to direct attack. Stone realized he was facing one of the most complex tactical situations in military history. He had to coordinate an assault involving dozens of different species, each with their own capabilities and limitations, against an enemy that was prepared to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. All Alliance vessels, he broadcast on the General Channel. This is Admiral Stone. The enemy has threatened to destroy the entire system if we proceed. I'm not asking anyone to participate in an operation that could result in massive civilian casualties. Any ship that wants to withdraw has my understanding and respect. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every single vessel in the Alliance fleet confirmed their intention to proceed with the operation. More than that, additional ships were still arriving. Word had spread throughout the galaxy that the final battle for liberation was beginning, and species that Stone had never heard of were rushing to participate. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're now showing over 3,000 vessels in system. The tactical computer is having trouble tracking them all." Stone looked at the display showing the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, ships from hundreds of species representing civilizations that spanned the entire spectrum of galactic development. Some were advanced beyond human comprehension. Others appeared to be held together with determination and spare parts. But all were united in their determination to end the Dominion's reign of terror. "Strike Commander Veltar," Stone called out. "What's the status of your infiltration teams?" However, the Dominion has implemented new security protocols. They are using biometric scanners keyed to species-specific genetic markers. Our stealth systems cannot defeat such measures. This was a problem Stone had anticipated. The Zephyrians were masters of infiltration, but their techniques relied on fooling electronic sensors, not biological ones. "Strike, Commander, we may have a solution." Admiral Stone to the Wanderer fleet vessel Eternal Vigil. The response came as the familiar direct transfer of thoughts and concepts rather than spoken words. "We are present, Admiral Stone. How may we assist?" "Eternal Vigil, is it possible for your people to mask the biometric signatures of infiltration teams to make security systems believe they're seeing authorized personnel?" An interesting challenge. We do not alter physical reality, but we can influence how that reality is perceived. Yes, we believe we can provide such assistance. The next hour was spent coordinating the most complex military operation in galactic history. The collective positioned their vessels at key points throughout the system, ready to contain any antimatter explosions. The Zephyrians launched infiltration teams protected by Wanderer empathic camouflage that would make security systems perceive them as authorized personnel. The Gorvani prepared heavy assault forces to take key installations by direct attack. And dozens of other species contributed their unique capabilities to a coordinated assault plan. Admiral Colonel Vasquez reported, "All forces are in position. We're ready to begin the operation." Stone took a deep breath. The success or failure of the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Proxima Centauri system, but the future of the entire galaxy. If they failed, the Dominion would regroup and likely implement even more brutal measures to maintain control. If they succeeded, they would face the challenge of building something better from the ashes of the old order. "All Alliance forces, this is Admiral Stone. Operation Starfall is a go." Repeat, Operation Starfall is a go. The first phase began with the Zephyrians. Their infiltration teams, protected by Wanderer empathic camouflage, moved through Dominion installations like ghosts. Security systems registered their presence but interpreted it as routine maintenance personnel going about their duties. Within 30 minutes, they had disabled primary defensive systems throughout the region. Phase 2 involved the collective. Their massive bioships moved to predetermined positions around antimatter storage facilities. Strange tendrils of living metal extended from their hulls, creating containment fields that could absorb and redirect explosive energy. They were making themselves into living shields for the civilian population. Phase 3 was the diversionary assault. Gorvani heavy cruisers engaged Dominion defense platforms in spectacular battles that drew attention away from the infiltration operations. Their massive ships traded devastating salvos with Dominion installations, while smaller Alliance vessels darted through the combat zone like swarms of angry insects. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "the Dominion is concentrating their forces against the Gorvani assault. They appear to be falling for the diversion." But Stone's attention was focused on a different part of the display. Deep within the administrative complex, Zephyrian teams were discovering something that wasn't in any intelligence report. "Admiral Stone," came Veltar's voice on a secure channel, "we have found something disturbing. There are extensive holding facilities within the administrative center. They contain thousands of beings, but they're not standard prison cells. What kind of facilities? Stone asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. They appear to be experimental chambers. The beings inside have been subjected to various forms of biological and psychological modification. We believe the Dominion has been using them as test subjects for new forms of control and manipulation. Stone felt a cold rage building in his chest. As if the standard atrocities weren't enough, the Dominion had been conducting experiments on sentient beings. Can your teams extract the subjects? We're working on it, Admiral, but many of them are in critical condition. They'll need immediate medical attention if they're to survive. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Governor Thaindus. The governor appeared on screen again, but his previous composure was gone. Behind him, alarms were flashing and his staff appeared to be in a state of barely controlled panic. Admiral Stone, your infiltrators are accessing restricted areas. If they continue, I'll be forced to activate the antimatter charges. Governor, we know about the experimental subjects. We're extracting them for medical treatment. You can either cooperate and ensure their safe removal, or you can try to murder them along with everyone else in the system. Those subjects are classified Dominion assets. You have no right to interfere with our research programs. Stone's voice turned cold. Governor, those assets are sentient beings who have been tortured for your amusement. The experiments end now. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Thaindus snarled. Some of those subjects have been modified to carry biological weapons. Others have been psychologically programmed as sleeper agents. If you release them, you could contaminate your entire fleet. The Dominion was certainly capable of such tactics, and they would have no scruples about using experimental subjects as biological warfare vectors. Eternal Vigil, he called out. Can your people determine if any of the experimental subjects pose a threat to the rescue teams? Admiral Stone, we are already in empathic contact with the imprisoned beings. Many have been severely damaged by their ordeal, but we detect no intentional biological hazards. However, several have been subjected to mental conditioning that could make them dangerous to themselves or others. Can you help them? We can provide emotional stabilization and begin the healing process. But full recovery will take time. These beings have endured horrors that few minds can survive intact. Stone made his decision. All rescue teams proceed with extraction. Medical ships are standing by to receive casualties. Eternal Vigil provides psychological support as needed. The extraction operation was unlike anything in military history. Zephyrian infiltrators worked alongside Wanderer empaths to carefully remove thousands of experimental subjects from the administrative complex. Many were in critical condition, their bodies and minds damaged by years or even decades of Dominion experimentation. Others were so traumatized that they couldn't function without constant psychological support. Admiral, Colonel Vasquez reported, we're receiving casualty assessments from the medical ships. Over 60% of the experimental subjects require life support. Their injuries are extensive. Stone closed his eyes briefly. Each rescued being represented not just a life saved, but evidence of the Dominion's systematic brutality. The galaxy was going to learn exactly what kind of regime they had been living under. Sir, the communications officer called out, Governor Thaindus is requesting to speak with you again. The governor's image appeared, but he looked like a different person. His pristine uniform was disheveled, his composure completely shattered. Admiral Stone, I want to negotiate terms for surrender. What changed your mind, Governor? My staff is refusing to activate the antimatter charges. They've seen the intelligence reports about what you found in the experimental facilities. They won't be party to covering up what we've done. Stone felt a mixture of relief and grim satisfaction. Even within the Dominion's own ranks, there were limits to what people would accept. Governor, here are my terms. Complete and immediate surrender of all Dominion forces in this system, full cooperation with Alliance investigations into war crimes, and personal guarantees for the safety of all civilian personnel. And what happens to me? You'll face trial for crimes against sentient life, but you'll receive fair treatment and legal representation. That's more than you gave your experimental subjects. Tanatus nodded slowly. I accept your terms. All Dominion forces in the Proxima Centauri system hereby surrender to the Liberation Alliance. As Dominion ships throughout the system powered down their weapons and prepared to be boarded, Stone found himself contemplating the broader implications of what they had accomplished. The Alliance had not only defeated a major Dominion stronghold, but had also exposed the regime's most horrific secrets to galactic scrutiny. Admiral, Colonel Vasquez approached with a datapad. Preliminary assessments indicate we've liberated over 200,000 experimental subjects, freed 37 million civilian personnel, and captured intelligence data on Dominion operations throughout the galaxy. And our casualties? Stone asked. Minimal, sir. The coordinated assault plan worked perfectly. Each species contributed their strengths, and the combination proved unstoppable. Stone nodded, but his attention was focused on the medical reports streaming in from the rescue ships. The experimental subjects represented a level of systematic cruelty that would shock even hardened military personnel. The galaxy needed to see what the Dominion was really capable of. Colonel, I want full documentation of everything we found here. Medical records, experimental protocols, facility layouts, everything. The galaxy needs to understand what we've been fighting against. Sir, some of the experimental data is difficult to view. The psychological impact on our personnel has been significant. I know, but if we're going to build a better galaxy, people need to understand why the old system had to be destroyed completely. As Alliance forces secured the Proxima Centauri system, Stone received reports from across the galaxy. The pattern was being repeated everywhere. Dominion forces were surrendering in increasing numbers as word spread about what had been discovered in the administrative centers. Personnel who had served the regime faithfully for decades were learning about atrocities they had never imagined. Admiral, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's from General Harrison. The display activated, showing General Rebecca Harrison in the Sol System Command Center. Behind her, Stone could see displays showing the tactical situation across multiple sectors of the galaxy. Marcus, congratulations on Proxima Centauri. But we've got a developing situation that requires immediate attention. What kind of situation, Rebecca?
The Dominion High Command has barricaded themselves in the Galactic Core Fortress.
Intelligence indicates they're planning a final strike that could devastate multiple sectors. We need to move quickly if we're going to prevent a catastrophic escalation. Stone looked at the tactical displays showing Alliance forces scattered across dozens of systems, each dealing with liberation operations and prisoner processing. Coordinating an assault on the Galactic Core would require pulling forces from every active operation. Rebecca, what's our timeline? Unknown, but probably measured in days rather than weeks. Marcus, this is it. The final battle. If we succeed, the Dominion ends forever. If we fail, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Stone understood the stakes. The Galactic Core Fortress was the heart of the Dominion's power, the ultimate stronghold that had never been successfully attacked in 3,000 years of galactic history. Admiral Stone, came the voice of the collective, we have heard your conversation. Our ships are prepared to join your assault on the core fortress. The beings who built that structure with the bones of our worlds will face justice. Strike Commander Veltar here, Admiral. The Zephyrian Resistance stands ready. We have been preparing for this battle for generations. Battle Leader Throck of the Gorvani Liberation Corps. My people will follow you to the core and beyond. One by one, representatives of every Alliance species confirmed their readiness to participate in the final assault. Stone realized he was about to command the largest military force in galactic history in an attack on the most heavily defended position ever constructed. All Alliance forces. He broadcast, prepare for immediate hyperspace transition to the Galactic Core. The Dominion's reign of terror ends now. As thousands of ships from hundreds of species prepared for the journey to the center of the galaxy, Stone found himself thinking about the experimental subjects they had rescued. Those tortured beings represented everything that was wrong with the Dominion's rule. But they also represented hope. Each rescued life was proof that the Alliance was fighting for something better than mere conquest. The final battle was coming, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. But for the first time since the liberation began, Stone felt genuinely confident about their chances. The Alliance had proven that cooperation was stronger than oppression, that unity was more powerful than fear, and that hope could triumph over even the darkest tyranny. The Dominion was about to learn what happened when you push the galaxy too far, and humanity was about to show the universe what they were truly capable of when they fought not just for themselves but for the freedom of all sentient life. The galactic core was a place of impossible beauty and unimaginable danger. Massive stars burned with colors that had no names, their light painting the surrounding space in hues that hurt human eyes to perceive directly. Black holes twisted space-time into knots, creating gravitational anomalies that could tear apart unwary vessels. And at the center of it all, like a cancer growing in the heart of creation, sat the Dominion's ultimate stronghold. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the command bridge of the Terra's Might, studying the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and dread. The fortress was built around an artificial construct that defied conventional understanding of engineering. It appeared to be a hollow sphere nearly the size of Earth's moon, its surface covered in defensive installations that bristled with enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. "Admiral," reported Captain Chen from her position at the tactical station. "Long-range scans confirm intelligence estimates. The fortress is powered by controlled black hole manipulation. Energy output is approximately 10,000 times greater than our largest fusion plants." "And the defensive systems?" Stone asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer would be overwhelming. "Over 50,000 individual weapon platforms. Each one appears to be capable of planetary bombardment. The fortress itself is protected by layered energy shields that could probably withstand direct impact from a dying star." Colonel Vasquez looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, the tactical computer has run over 10,000 attack simulations. Success probability in a direct assault is essentially zero." "The fortress is simply too well defended." Stone nodded grimly. The galactic core stronghold had been designed over 3 millennia to be absolutely impregnable. Every lesson learned from previous battles had been incorporated into its defenses. Every possible angle of attack had been anticipated and countered. "What about our intelligence on the interior?" Stone asked. "That's where things get interesting," Vasquez replied. "According to our sources, the fortress contains not just military installations, but the entire Dominion High Command structure. We're talking about the ruling council, the supreme military leadership, and the administrative apparatus that governs half the galaxy. But more than that," she paused, manipulating the holographic display to show a cross-section view of the fortress interior. "The central core contains what our sources describe as the Dominion Archives. Every piece of data they've collected over 3,000 years of expansion. Scientific research, cultural databases, historical records, and most importantly, detailed files on every atrocity they've committed." Stone felt his pulse quicken. "You're talking about evidence that could implicate thousands of individuals across the galaxy. Proof of systematic war crimes on an unprecedented scale." "Exactly. But Admiral, there's something else. Intelligence suggests that the High Command is planning what they call the Final Protocol. If they're facing imminent defeat, they intend to transmit a signal that will activate sleeper agents throughout Alliance territory." "What kind of sleeper agents?" Stone asked, though he suspected the answer would be disturbing. "Experimental subjects like the ones we rescued from Proxima Centauri. But these have been programmed and positioned specifically to cause maximum damage to civilian populations. We're talking about potential casualties in the billions." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Alliance had been fighting to liberate the galaxy, but the Dominion was prepared to turn that liberation into a bloodbath that would make their previous atrocities look minor by comparison. "Admiral Stone," came the familiar voice of Strike Commander Veltar over the communication system, "my scouts have completed their reconnaissance of the fortress perimeter. The defenses are formidable." What's your assessment, Strike Commander? A direct assault would be suicide even with our combined fleets. However, my people have identified certain vulnerabilities in the fortress design. The Dominion engineers were so focused on preventing external attack that they may have overlooked internal threats. What kind of internal threats? Admiral, the fortress requires massive amounts of maintenance and supply operations. Automated systems handle most of the routine work, but there are still personnel who must physically access critical systems. If we could infiltrate a small team, the security would be impossible to bypass, interrupted Captain Chen. We're talking about the most secure facility in galactic history. Perhaps, replied Veltar, but the Wanderer fleet has suggested an alternative approach. Rather than bypassing security, we might be able to convince it that we belong there. Before Stone could ask what he meant, the bridge communications activated with the familiar direct transfer sensation that indicated contact with the Eternal Vigil.
Admiral Stone, we have been studying the fortress and its inhabitants.
The beings within are not united in their support of the final protocol. Many are beginning to question the righteousness of their cause. We believe we can work with this doubt. What are you suggesting? Stone asked. We propose a coordinated psychological operation. While conventional forces engage the external defenses, a small team enhanced with our empathic abilities could infiltrate the fortress. We can make the security systems believe they are seeing authorized personnel, but more importantly, we can strengthen the resolve of those within who oppose the final protocol. You're talking about mind control. How is that different from what the Dominion does to their subjects? We do not control minds, Colonel. We influence emotions and perceptions, but only to help beings act on what they already believe to be right. Those within the fortress who are horrified by the final protocol will find the courage to act on their convictions. Those who truly support genocide, they will remain unchanged. Stone considered this. The Wanderers had proven themselves to be the most ethically consistent species in the Alliance. If they said they could influence without controlling, he was inclined to trust them. Admiral, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from inside the fortress. It's on an emergency medical frequency. The main display activated, showing what appeared to be a medical facility within the fortress. The individual on screen was wearing Dominion Medical Corps insignia, but his expression was one of barely contained horror. This is Chief Medical Officer Corleth of the Galactic Corps Medical Division. Is anyone receiving this transmission? Stone stepped forward. This is Admiral Marcus Stone of the Liberation Alliance. We're receiving you, Doctor. Admiral, thank the void. I'm transmitting on a frequency that bypasses military command channels. They don't know I'm contacting you. Doctor, why are you taking such a risk? Corleth's composure cracked slightly. Admiral, they brought thousands of experimental subjects to the fortress, not for medical treatment, but for final activation. The final protocol involves turning them into biological weapons and releasing them throughout Alliance space. Stone felt his blood turn cold. How many subjects are we talking about, Doctor? Over 100,000, Admiral. They have been modified with infectious agents designed to target specific species. If the High Command succeeds in deploying them, entire populations could be wiped out within days. The implications were staggering. The Dominion wasn't just planning to activate sleeper agents. They were preparing to commit xenocide on a galactic scale. Doctor, can you prevent the activation? Not alone. But if...